Willkommen, bienvenue. Welcome once again to a IPSA kind of magic live stream, specializing in talking about all things to do with search, all things to do with IPSA. That's the Independent Personal Search Agents, currently chaired by Hamish McClade. His chief exec is with us, Heather Borglead, and we're talking today about a thorny topic, which is integrity, specifically search integrity and standards. I remember when I was young, I was always told that manners maketh man. I think standards maketh solid business, and perhaps standards aren't what they should be. Hamish, would you explain more?
Well, I first of all should actually say I think it's a change to be back in the studio. It was much better sort of live a week ago Monday when we were actually managed to actually join together to actually sort of speak as much as anything else about standards, and it was interesting to hear from several speakers about really the grassroots of what were then at the time personal searches. From the time basically it was typed out and stuck in the post, compared to what we have now with a vast array of data being here, there and all over the place, not necessarily all being correct. However, what we've actually strived to do right the way through, and since the inception of IPSA in 2005, one of the things that IPSA members were working on after those initial stages when people started getting together was to create a standard. We called it a code. We called it a search code, and we had worked at it. One of the original team, the original chairman, he actually was a trainer, and he would train a number of people as well. And the work at the time was to actually try and create a code that would be acceptable to the industry. Now, shortly later, a year or so later, COPSO, another organisation outside of the who tended to work with much larger organisations, whereas we at IPSA, we are looking at the independent search agents. Within COPSO, fair to say, they deal with, as well as independent personal search agents like ourselves, they also do deal with a number of corporate providers of searches. But they did come along, and rather than having two different standards, which seemed a daft thing to be doing, we stepped back and allowed the PCCB, what is called the Property Codes Compliance Board, establish itself as a standard that we would all adhere to. So all IPSA members now do actually subscribe to the PCCB, that Personal Codes Compliance Board. That is one of the ways in which one can become a member of IPSA, to be able to subscribe to that. But it doesn't end there.
Heather, tell us the next part of the story.
Okay, so when we're approached by new firms that want to be part of IPSA, as Hamish rightly said, one of the main requirements is that they must be registered with the PCCB, and they must carry £2 million PI insurance cover, and then we ask them to undertake an exam, which has changed over the years. And the current format of that exam is we do it as a Zoom interview. So we have a list of a bank of around 50 questions, and it'll be either myself and Jackie Dyson, who is our trainer, or Hamish. Two or three of us will interview the code compliance officer for that company, and we will pick some questions and ask them, and we will base our decision on their answers. We like doing it as an interview because previously there was an online exam that you could have access to, but the last few of those that were done, there was a lot of copying and pasting going on, so it didn't really show somebody's knowledge and understanding. Whereas through a conversation aimed around these questions, you can delve a little bit deeper, and you can say, well, where would you find that information? And if you came across this, what would you do next? And it's that sort of judging that depth of knowledge and expertise and experience to ensure that people that become IPSA members are holding up to our standards.
It seems to me, though, Hamish, that it's rubbish in, rubbish out. If the data that's provided at the back end isn't quite up to par, then even though you're searching for it, it still can come out with all the wrong information.
So very, very true. I mean, this is one of the other interesting aspects. To support any of the work that we actually sort of do, an inherent part of it is an inclusion of, if you like, insurance. We have our own PI cover, as Heather had actually sort of mentioned, but within each search that we carry out, there is also insurance added to it to cover the instances when we are picking up on rubbish, because it is rubbish. Now, we mess it up. It's our insurance. However, it isn't necessarily a mistake on our particular sort of part. I have to admit it. I'll hold my hand up. We made a mistake the other day there. We actually suggested that a particular sort of property was actually within Windsor Maidenhead. And somebody said, "Are you sure about that?" I said, it's basically Vale of the White Horse. So it's easy enough to make. But if you like, if something had gone seriously wrong there, our personal cover would have covered that. Can you actually sort of see there is a benefit to the way in which it's done? We have two types of cover which are actually included.
Me too. Of course, if you use an IPSA member, you're very unlikely to ever require that insurance cover, because even though, as you say, it's rubbish in, rubbish out, our members have enough local knowledge and expertise to query that rubbish that comes out and to refine it and to ask the additional questions that might be needed. And what's happening more and more now is that obviously a lot of information is available online. So you could sit at your desk anywhere in the country, and technically you should be able to carry out a search in a lot of areas without having to leave your desk. However, there is no substitute for that local knowledge of knowing, well, hang on a minute, this hasn't come up as a smoke control area, but I'm pretty certain it is in one. Or what happened to that conservation area there used to be there? Had they changed the boundary? If you're not familiar with that area, you're not going to ask those questions. So, yeah, if you're using an independent search provider based in the area that the search is being required for, you're far less likely to ever need that insurance cover, even though it's there.
I think we should always have that as a fallback, but yeah, I think the big thing, Hamish and Heather, is the fact that because your personal search agents each focus on one geographical region and have spent often tens of years building up a relationship with the council, et cetera, in that region, it makes their searches more intelligent than just regurgitating data.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. I think also worth pointing out, as Heather said, one of the great advantages of an interview, it would be far, far better could it be done in person. Not always practical. It makes it much, much easier to actually have this particular style of format for an interview. But people don't necessarily when we're actually discussing it, when we're speaking about these answers, they don't necessarily need to be getting it absolutely everything 100% right. It's the intent that makes the difference. And what we can actually do, and this again does actually demonstrate one of the great advantages of IPSA members, we are all in it together, for the better, for the good of all. And this is how it started up. It started up as a friendly relationship between just a couple of people, and then it extended. And we're always happy to guide people and sort of, again, as Heather actually sort of questioned, because not all the time do we 100% get all of the information necessarily, and we need to actually check it, sort of double check it. But the great thing is about it, because we're working with each other and many of us are experienced in what we do, it's very easy just to turn around and say, oh, by the way, was that not in a conservation area? I mean, I must admit, here in Bicester, they have amended the conservation area, as we have actually sort of continued through Cherwell District, that we're sort of part of. And things like that sort of change. But because we have that conversation between each other, we're not battering each other. Oh, you got that wrong. there's no point in that because it isn't necessarily wrong. It could actually be that particular sort of change that comes through. So we help and we support each other. We do have a platform, which means we have consistency throughout what we go on, and working on that platform enables us to get everything right. Now, not all the time do we need to use that platform.
Right.
We do have, for inter-trade work between each of the IPSA members, if people are using their own platform that we don't necessarily access, it's formatted, the search is formatted in such a way that we give all of those answers, so everything is actually going to be included. And we're always there for the question to be made of us as suppliers of that information. If somebody wants to follow up, we can always feed it backwards. We can always sort of feed it through, because ultimately we want to save the time of both the buyers and the sellers in the whole operation of what's going on within conveyancing. But we also want to cut out time for the solicitors who are involved. We don't want to waste their time. And as we said before, there can be too much information that is unnecessary sometimes. So it can send solicitors down the wrong track, investigating things that are totally unnecessary. Whereas we can actually talk, we can move that out of the way, and we can sort of adjust that, whichever format we're returning in, whether we're going through on a particular portal, which demands this particular way, or this other way, which, if you like, our IPSA members has been designed by people who are qualified or have qualified in the past as land charges officers. So it's not something we make up. We do have
an interesting example there would be where, for example, you've had a search back and it's got a tree consent on it, but there's nothing about a tree preservation order. So the first thing that you or I are going to do, Hamish, is find out, right, why is that on there? Is there an overhanging tree from next door? Is it in a conservation area because it would need a tree consent? So we're asking that question so that when we provide it to our client, they don't have to ask that question. Now, there are firms out there that just provide the information. They don't refine it. They don't ask the questions. The conveyancer at the other end of that one is going to have to find the answer to that question. But at the end of our route, that question's been answered for them. So that's a typical example of something that we probably do on an almost weekly basis. Is one of those where we ask that extra question or delve a bit deeper, or we know where to find the maps of the tree preservation areas for certain councils. We know how to find out whether a particular tree or a whole area is covered. And that's the questions then that the conveyancer doesn't have to separately find out at a later date.
I have to say that when I first was introduced to IPSA, one part that actually took a while to sink in is the non-compete aspect of the membership, and that was quite a shock to me, that people will literally say, no, actually I'm not the specialist area. What you really need to speak to is Joanne over there who knows that area far better, or Hamish who knows Bicester and this is often because, like, in Jackie's a good case in point, they're often poachers turn gamekeeper, or vice versa, in fact, so that they have much more explicit knowledge of what really goes on behind the scenes, where to find that information that's so required. Has it always been that way since the start, Heather?
For me, yes, but I do know that we have members that said, when I first came along, I thought, well, why would I want to talk to other people doing what I'm doing? They're just going to nick all my customers. And after their first meeting that they came to, they thought, wow, there's enough work for all of us, and we can work together and help each other. And that's still the case now, I think. Most people are I had a phone call from one of our members a couple of weeks ago. He says, Heather, you do a lot of sort of commercial and agricultural searches, and I mostly do residential. Can I pick your brains on a couple of things? And I said, sure. And we had a conversation about it. And I saw him at the conference last week. He said, thank you so much for that conversation. I won the biggest order I've ever won because you gave me the background to be able to offer that client what they needed. And I'm just chuffed to bits for him, and I know that he will send me work when he's got it in this area, and I still send him work in that area. That's those extra little bits. If he flourishes, then my business will eventually flourish, because there's a knock-on effect. If we all work together to create a better place for independent regulated searches and to get the word out that They're every bit as good as the council searches, and using an independent provider is far better than using a corporate provider. If we all just keep banging on the drum about that, then it benefits all of us.
Without getting too misty-eyed about it, Hamish, IPSA is a kind of fellowship in a way, isn't it?
Oh, very, very much so. I mean, one of the great things about it, I mean, Heather and I particularly sort of know this, and probably something you picked up on as well. Many of us have been working together for that decade, for those 2 decades. In fact, some people were even working together more than 20 years ago. So if you one could call it camaraderie, I don't know, but it's genuine friendships. People have developed genuine friendships.
Well, I'm an outsider, and I've had nothing but positive experiences with IPSA, and in a couple of times where I've actually physically met up with groups of IPSA members, they've been very welcoming, and also on top of that, I constantly see IPSA members supporting each other, and I find that very reassuring indeed. In fact, to anyone listening right now, if you want to become an IPSA member because you want to benefit from that fellowship, you want to benefit from that share alike attitude, and the fact that if you're working in a certain area, then you may be far better positioned to look after searches in an area than another person, and will be treated as such, then I suggest you approach IPSA, the Independent Personal Search Association. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Well, I mean, just to add to what you said, we do so welcome new members, and it is always good to join. And we have found, particularly sort of recently, those new members who've come on board, they have come to realize the benefits of actually joining an organization such as ours. It's a non-profit organization, and it's genuinely to support those who are buying and selling properties. Within that, however, we are able to share that friendship between each other, help and support each other. And like Heather just mentioned, if we've got more people actually carrying out, we are supporting what is going on with the industry. We're a small part of what's going on in the industry, because people tend to go down the if you like, a predetermined route. Very often they don't understand that there are independent people out there that can actually support them. So really, I'm so well. I as I said last week, I really feel rather privileged being able to work with the number of people with the level of knowledge which they have, and what they have done, what has been done over the years by this small part of the industry to ensure, in fact, that the whole industry itself has integrity about it, as a consequence, particularly of some of the work which was carried out by the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents. And long may it continue.
Indeed. And on that note, let me thank Hamish McClay for having set this up with me, and Heather Poolgley for taking time out of a valuable day. Was it valuable day out of her time? I'm not sure which. For joining us here today. And to all of you out there, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please look after that mental health. Until next week, bye-bye now.